Okay, we now move to the approval of the October 27, 2020 minutes. One assumes that you all have read it and reviewed it. Are there any corrections or comments?
This is Jim Downey. I'm marked absent from that meeting. I was present, and I am present for this meeting.
Okay, correction will be made. Are there any other comments or corrections on the minutes? Hearing none, is there anyone who opposes the minutes?
Oh, I see.
Is there anyone who abstains on the minutes? We will therefore consider the minutes accepted unanimously by acclamation. Thank you very much. We now move to the correspondence report. Let me see. We have New York State DOH reports 2 certificates surrendered, one of a Neil Toomb from Port Chester, EMT 410570, and another Brian McIntyre from Long Beach, EMT number 382912111. No, that's part of the date. I didn't think EMT numbers went up that high. Okay. As of 11/03/20, the 11 is not part of the number. Okay. There was an interim guidance travel advisory which was distributed. There was communication between New York's the District 4 and 8 and the Bedford Stuyvesant VAC that items are being corrected, revised to better operationalize the corps. I don't know if that's a word, but okay. No new information from course sponsors. And we have an email from Dr. Leviton regarding patient transport without a wheelchair. And I have asked him to attend this meeting, and under new business, he will discuss the issue and we will discuss it further. It's an important issue. And the minutes reflect that Glen Oaks VAC expansion certificate of need, that there was an updated territory clarification. The hearings officer's report was received and distributed to all members of ambulance, as well as the transcript of the meeting. And we sent out agendas, minutes, and associated, and a letter to Ryan Greenberg asking for letter affirming continuation of REMSCO and program agency contracts. A similar letter to the commissioner. By the way, Marie, I just signed both of them and send them back to you.
Great, thank you.
2020-17 REMAC advisory online protocol update training. Let me just at this point ask the question whether the ALS paramedic online training is yet already online. No.
It should be on in the next day or two.
Okay.
I actually received the draft today from
Thank
the DOH, so in the next day or two it should be there.
Thank you. You know that us medics are just desperately sitting here waiting on pincushions to take this. We also
you
had
won't have access until July 31st. I mean, until December 31st. That's when you'll have access.
Okay, so
you'll have to do it. You have to wait till last second.
thank you. I love you too. And we have an online I thought I muted you. Protocol update training, supplemental information. And of course, we sent out, we mentioned the hearing report and the public hearing transcript. Okay, that is the correspondence. Is there any questions on the correspondence report? Hearing none, we will move on to the main discussion. Okay, and this is, we need to have a vote on the determination of public need for the expansion of operating territory, Glen Oaks Volunteer ambulance course 7380. You have all received a copy of the hearing officer. You've had an opportunity to review both the transcript and the application itself. We did have a discussion at the last meeting, and I believe that, Marie, you have the official language of the motion, so please read that motion into the record.
Okay. So the official motion is the ambulance committee, which has conducted a public hearing and has carefully reviewed the information, materials, and record in this matter, recommends that the hearing officer's report in the matter of the application submitted by Glen Oaks VAC to expand its existing territory into Bayside and Oakland Gardens communities in Queens, which is the boundaries are Long Island Expressway, 26th Avenue, Cross Island Parkway, and Francis Lewis Boulevard, be accepted and the application be recommended for approval.
Thank you. We need a second on that motion. Someone make a second. A
Jim
member of
Downey
the
seconds it.
Thank you. Please remember, there are a lot of people here who are not members of the ambulance committee. Only members of the ambulance committee can speak at this point. Okay, before we begin a discussion on the motion, is there any member who feels that they need to recuse themselves from the discussion or the vote due to financial interest or other conflict of interest?
Jerry Gelbart.
Okay, let the record show that Jerry Gelbart is recusing himself from the vote. Is there any? I'm sorry. go ahead.
This is Dave Bektansky. I'm Jerry's alternate, but I'm a board member for the Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps, so I'm also recusing myself.
Okay, please let the record show.
You did, yeah. This is Travis Kessel. I'm also a board member. My alternate, James Downey, will be representing. So I will be recusing myself. James Downey will be representing.
Very good. So at this point, he's going to speak and not you. Good. There are 3 people who've just recused themselves. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone who feels that someone who's sitting at this meeting should have recused themselves? In that case, Marie, can you please report how many voting people are going to vote, given that we have 3 recusals?
Okay, give me 1 second. I have 10 people that are able to vote.
Okay, and we need a majority of 7, I believe.
The quorum is 7.
A 7 to vote. So we can proceed. More people would have recused themselves, then we would not be able to move forward on this item. Very good. So we now open discussion on the motion to approve. Pro or con? Who would like to speak? Please, if you wish, you can raise your hand or you can just start speaking and I will just recognize you.
This is Jim Downey. I have 2 corrections for the hearing officer report on misidentification of people. On page 16, Louis Greco is actually the vice chair of District 4. And on page 17, Michael Lyons is currently the president of Bay Community Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Just those 2 corrections to associations.
Okay, James, we don't have the authority to correct a report of a hearing officer. We can note for the committee on the record that we have found 2 errors in his report, but we can't really correct his report. So we'll note that on the record that his report has at least 2 errors, and those are the ones you've replied. Are there any other discussion, pro and con? Well, if there's no discussion, anybody? Hearing no further discussion, I'll ask Marie to make a roll call vote.
Okay, please respond, support or oppose
Or abstain.
or abstain. Okay, Dov Jacob,
Support.
Grace Cacciola,
Support.
Mitchell Powell, or William Goffin. Bill, you're not able to unmute yourself?
Has no audio.
Can you hear me now? Support.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Danny Meisel's?
Abstain.
Okay. Did Robert Bristol come in?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, support, abstain, or oppose?
Support.
Thank you. John Johnstone?
Support.
Thank you. James Downey?
Support.
Vincent Baranco?
Support.
Martina Baccarella?
Support.
Brian Levinsky?
Support.
And Udidya Langsam.
Support.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in support and 1 abstain. It carries.
Thank you very much. It will be moved to the REMSCO in about 45 minutes. We now move to the Ambulance Committee tag reports. Who is going to tell us about the tag reports? Marie?
I can ask Jerry if he will give us an update on the mapping tag.
Jerry?
Sure can. The VAC mapping has been completed. That has been confirmed by Rob Bristol from New York City Emergency Management. We've transferred that data over to FDNY for their utilization. We have also, in receipt of the same data, so we could develop an app for use for the volunteers, REMSCO, and other agencies to determine immediately relative areas based on address. So I publicly want to thank Rob Bristol, his GIS team, and New York City Emergency Management for all their work and cooperation to getting this done. We will provide the final documents to REMSCO for dissemination as needed to the various parties and the volunteers. So job well done.
Anything else? Any questions? Anything else?
I'd just like to thank this tag for a job well done. It's taken a long time and they've stuck it out. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have any other tags that need to report?
We have no security sticker issues. What I can say is if any agencies out there do need security stickers, please let us know. We're not charging for them anymore, so please call us up and we will get your vehicle stickered in case of an emergency.
Marie, I would suggest that it's now been a year or two since we last sent out such a letter, that you send out such a letter to all the agencies reminding them of the importance of having the sticker. Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any news about ID cards or anything?
No, not right now. We actually just got in the supplies that we have been waiting for quite a while, so we can probably start doing the ID cards. I'd like to get the ID committee together one more time
Wonderful.
to finalize who's going to be getting these cards.
Who is on the card? Who is on the committee?
I don't have that list in front of me, but I will get that to you. And
Okay. Thank you so much. Is there any other tag reports?
no,
Okay. Is there any unfinished business?
I do not believe so.
May I
Okay.
ask a question about the ID cards?
You sure? Go ahead.
Are the physicians on the call familiar with the New York State Physician ID card?
No.
So some years ago, when I was working with SEMO, we put together a physician ID card that's linked to your New York State professional license and your New York State driver's license. And for $5, you get this physician ID card, which clearly identifies you as a physician licensed in New York State. On the reverse of the card is a barcode that provides your specialty and medical licensing information, so that when you want to enter a site where there's been a declared emergency, individuals who are controlling the ingress and egress can identify you as a licensed physician in New York State. Are others familiar with this?
Dr. Leviton, I think we have an issue. Pardon me, I don't rile feathers. Is that we, as REMSCO, do not want all doctors, whoever they are, to enter scenes. Okay, there is a REMSCO physicians, REMAC authorized physicians do have e-cards and are authorized to come on scenes. But speaking as a medic on the street, one of the most difficult things that a medic faces is telling a doctor, excuse us, but you have no place here. And that causes great angst, great stress, and usually ends up hurting the patient, because the physician is a podiatrist who hasn't practiced cardiac medicine in 25 years. So
that's the difference of this card. This card is only issued to physicians licensed to practice medicine in New York State, not podiatrists, not chiropractors, not veterinarians, and so forth.
Okay, I
think Dr.
I was being a
Levitan,
little facetious, but I was saying the same thing.
no, but Dr. Levitan, it's also to all physicians, and not all physicians have a place in an emergency response. So that's number one. Number two is that's also limited only to people who live in New York State. If you do not live in New York State, you're not eligible for that card. The REMAC has a regional card that we want to have for not just physicians, but for all providers in the region. So I think we're talking about two separate things.
Okay, thank you. I'll step back. Thank you.
Actually, Dr. Leviton, I would be interested in speaking to you about this card to see if there are any aspects of it that we might be able to utilize with our regional card. So I'll talk to you offline.
Thanks a lot.
Great. Okay, so let's move to new business. And the first item in new business is Dr. Leviton is please present the issues and we'll discuss it.
Great, thank you, everyone. At Metropolitan Hospital, we were engaged with several patients transported to our facility without the patient's wheelchairs or assisted devices. Assisted devices may include things as walkers and the like, even prosthetic devices. We work very closely with Glenn Aceda and his unit, and have to call out several people who were quite helpful, including Chief Monsignor and Chief Dimone, who were able to help us make sure that ambulances, when they picked up a patient who had an assisted device or wheelchair, was certain that those devices were transported with the patient, or in the instance of these electronic bariatric chairs, they were brought over by a separate ambulance. We recently had some cases where patients were transported by other services, not FIDNY, where the individual was transported to our facility without their wheelchair. And this creates quite consternation for the individual because they're dependent upon movement and activities with these assistive devices. When Marie and I spoke, we learned that there may not be a protocol or standard by REMSCO for transporting patients with their wheelchairs and assisted devices. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to put something together that would prevent others from experiencing what we experienced. Some of the excuses, maybe that's not a good word. I don't want to be inflammatory here because I want to build something constructive that will be supportive of our community. The wheelchair was broken, the wheelchair was soiled, and so on and so forth. We at Metropolitan Hospital will take the patient's wheelchair regardless of the condition. For us, it's a lot less costly to repair or clean than to replace. Wheelchairs can cost anywhere from $1,700 upwards of $5,000. Patients are limited by their insurance of having a mobile device or assisted device replaced every 3 to 5 years, depending upon their plan, including Medicaid. So I'll stop there to see what your thoughts are. But I would like to see as an outcome of this is that we have a protocol throughout REMSCO regarding the transporting of patients' wheelchairs and assistive devices. Thank you.
Jerry, did you want to say something? You're muted. Jerry, you're muted.
I'm here. I understand wholeheartedly how important it is to have the patient extenders with the patient when they arrive at the ED. Aside from looking at the security and the ability of those extenders to follow the patient through their care plan at the hospital and through admission, is a separate and distinct matter. But from a pre-hospital care standpoint, the main issue that I would take note of that we would have to address is the safety and security from a transportation standpoint in the back of an ambulance, because all of the federal and NFPA guidelines right now do not have any standards, guidelines, or capabilities or retention for those devices, specifically because they don't meet federal mechanical and vehicle standards for retention. In fact, the federal government just revised 2 years ago stretcher retention. So I would strongly say that we would have to look at that crew safety in the back of an ambulance, because any not properly restrained device that's in the back of an ambulance, albeit even ambulance equipment, is a projectile in the case of an ambulance accident or rollover. And that is a very big safety issue that we have to address if we want to move forward on that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment?
I just wanted to ask Grace or someone from the fire department. I know you have a policy on this, and part of your policy includes communicating with the police department, who may or may not be available to assist. But do you have within your agency vehicles that respond to these types of situations to pick up equipment and transport it anywhere?
Our first line is to utilize NYPD. We have utilized the bariatric ambulance in the past. However, we really don't like to utilize a resource designated for patient care to move equipment, because now if we need the bariatric ambulance and it's tied up in movement of equipment, we're now doing a patient a disservice who actually needs the vehicle.
Yeah. So do you allow, though, these pieces of equipment to be transported in the ambulance with the patient?
No.
Do you have, no, okay. Yeah,
No,
I just wanted to,
we usually will utilize a secondary vehicle to transport the device. In the past, we've utilized the Me Too, which is a very large vehicle, and we're putting our crews at a liability to take that vehicle out for a wheelchair. But the Me Too, remember, is larger than the MERV. So do we really want that vehicle in city streets just to move one wheelchair?
Is there someone here from the commercial ambulances that want to speak on what their policy is? Well, I heard from the volunteers and from Fidney.
So you did, yeah. From the commercial side, I can tell you there is no policy, and while at least at my agency, I know we'll do everything that we can in our power to accommodate patients' needs. Many of these wheelchairs, we're not talking about the smaller ones that will fold up and fit in place that we could jerry-rig somehow with straps. I'm talking about these heavier devices that are simply not going to fit into the ambulances with the patients. That having been said, a majority of the patients that we will be transporting, we're probably going to be bringing back ourselves later also. So they're not likely to be needing that device wherever it is that they're going.
That raises a great question then that maybe Grace would like to entertain on adding to the ACR is, do you need your assisted device transported with you, or may we leave it behind? Yes, no. That way we have some documentation that the question was considered. The patient gave an opportunity to answer that question, and then we have closed the loop in this concern on that one particular instance. That's a great point, Morty. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like out of this, all the sectors, the volunteers would have the greatest issue here, because they are, like the fire department, more likely to pick up patients as 911 patients in the field where there's been an accident or where they've gotten ill and the equipment may be left.
This is Jim Downey. Some of the volunteer squads still operate the smaller Type 2 vans, so it would be an issue for anything larger than the normal fold-up wheelchair. My question for the hospitals is, since they have more resources than we have, is there a possibility that the social worker there can have the supply section at a hospital send out a larger truck with a lift gate or a ramp that could collect the wheelchair and bring it back to the hospital?
Yeah, we looked at that, James. We looked at using our hospital police. We're part of the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, and they don't have the vehicles or the ability and manpower to do that. And they retorted back to me, well, why doesn't the ambulance bring it with them? So it just became this whole circular, uncomfortable situation where we don't know exactly what to do and why we're bringing it to the group here for discussion.
There also could be a consideration with some contamination in the wheelchair.
Yes.
Bed bugs,
We've
etc.
had that as a concern. One of our patients, unfortunately, is incontinent, and so we've engaged folks to use red bags. And, Kevin Chason's not on the call, but he's the medical director of EMS over at Mount Sinai. Very gracious when I brought this to his attention. They actually went out, found the chair, red bagged it, and brought it to our hospital. So they were a great partner in meeting this particular patient's needs. But that is a consideration as well. What I've done on my side is I went down to our maintenance department. We do have parts and pieces and so forth. I went to environmental services. So we are able to clean and repair chairs. We just need to get them so that we can return them with the patient when they're discharged back to the community.
I want to point out from the volunteer perspective, we once upon a time discussed a matter of how do we transport pediatric kids on an ambulance. Forget about equipment right now, even the children. And I would venture to say that the majority of volunteers in the city do not have the resources to buy children's seats that are compatible with stretchers and whatever. And many volunteer agencies are still doing it the old-fashioned, illegal, improper way of putting the child on top of the mother, on top of the stretcher. So a very important consideration for the volunteers, which is a very large sector, is funds. Who's going to pay for this? How do we, unpaid mandates is something that is very, very difficult to accomplish here. I mean, remember, there's three sectors here. I'm not worried about the commercial. I am worried, but the commercials can worry about their profits. Sydney can get their money out of taxes.
Well, you did before.
The poor volunteers have nothing. Literally nothing.
If we take a step back for a second, and we're not even talking about the finances of it, there is safety issues with putting a wheelchair in the ambulance with the patient and the crew. And even the fire department in their policy has made it clear that the wheelchair does not go with the patient. It can go separately from the patient, but it doesn't go with the patient. I think that the only infrastructure that has the resources and the logistics resources in the field at any one time is the fire department. Almost nobody else has the ability to have the logistical support to move equipment like that after the fact, especially not the volunteers, because they're volunteering their time. And the privates, it's more of a challenge, but it's still a challenge. So I think that we really need to realize that while I agree with Dr. Levitin that it's really important to get the patient's transportation, their wheelchair, to the hospital, the role might not be that of the EMS provider, and there might need to be a separate system that manages this. He already approached New York Health and Hospitals Police. They said no. Maybe it's a social work or a social responsibility to get these chairs, and it's not necessarily the responsibility of the EMS provider.
Thank you. Travis, you had your hand up? Travis, you want to unmute yourself if you want to speak? You have your hand up.
Clarifying, while we do, as the volunteer sector, cost and funds are always an issue, we definitely still advocate for the highest level of care, and the mandate shouldn't be based on cost prohibitive. It should be on what's the best for the patient. So the volunteer sector supports the best patient outcome and best patient care side of things rather than on the cost effective side of it.
So I'm just doing a quick Google search on wheelchair brackets for mounting. A lot of them will go right into a trailer hitch, working with bungee cords. Would folks be adverse to my doing some research on the applicable types of add-ons that we can place on our ambulances as a potential fix?
Dr.
I just
Levitin?
don't think that having an ambulance driving through the city with a wheelchair bungee cord to the back would be appropriate.
It
I
also,
think that there's
Bert-
safety and,
One at a time. Dr. Schenker, you were talking and
no, I just think that there are safe, listen, I agree that these wheelchairs need to get to the patient. We all agree with that, and we all want to do that because that's the best thing for the patient. But I think that in the course of managing the patient's care, this should not be a priority. Meaning, managing the patient requires us to take care of the patient. If you're bungee cording, I mean, to sit there and have to bungee cord a wheelchair onto something, or even in the ambulance, if there's a mount for it, that's not a priority in managing patient care. It is a priority in getting it to the hospital, and we all agree with that. I'm just not sure that this is a frontline EMS responsibility. Maybe there's somebody else in the system that should be responsible for this. Maybe the policy should be NYPD. I'm not really sure, but the answer is that I think you're putting crews at risk. You're also delaying on-scene care if you have to figure out how to secure a wheelchair in or on an ambulance. And I'm sure that Grace and Christine would agree with me that an FDNY ambulance is not going to have a wheelchair strapped to the back of it.
No,
To that point, Dr. Schenker, I do agree 100% with you. I think that's very dangerous for all EMS providers. And I also agree that the priority is the patient care and not the device itself. While I think it's important that they have everything that they need, to your point earlier, it is the NYPD's responsibility to secure any properties that belong to the patient. They're on the scenes of most 911 calls. They are available. They take possession of property. How they get it to the hospital, I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But they're in touch with family members, making sure that property is secured. So I think this would be very difficult for as the FDNY, we have some capability. However, like Chief Cacciola mentioned, it's not ideal at this point. And I don't know how that would work for volunteer, or any other EMS provider. So I think there's a lot more conversation that needs to happen around that. And I agree, Dr. Schenker, that this is probably a social service or an NYPD issue.
any other comments? Sean?
Yeah, hi. So I just want to take a step back a little bit and sort of think about the patient perspective for a second. So when it comes to the device itself, right, I think that we can all agree that the patient doesn't need the device in the emergency room, right? They don't need the device immediately upon going to the hospital. And even I think that I could argue even in the inpatient setting, they might not necessarily need the device. It's really when they're being discharged home that they kind of need the device. So I think immediately that, somebody who's in a wheelchair has some sort of a device like that it does put a lot of stress on the patient about their device and where is their device and is their device going to meet them at the hospital. And I think at times, even as a provider, that can, introduce some dilemma between patient communication with the provider. So if the answer is that it's NYPD that's going to be taking this task, or is the answer social work, I think that the main root of the issue is sort of easing that patient's angst, right? And saying to all of the EMS providers, knowing that these are the protocols that are in place, it's the NYPD, it's social work, somebody will take care of your wheelchair eventually. And I think that would put the patient at ease. So I don't necessarily think the argument here is we need to have EMS providers taking the wheelchair to the hospital. I think what could come out of this conversation would be more productive would be, this is the next step as to where your wheelchair will get to you eventually. And as an EMS provider, once we get you secured in the hospital, I will make that communication to the next line provider.
That's
So-
awesome. Thank you for that, Sean.
Is there any other discussion on this matter? Does anybody feel that would like to join a small tag to discuss it further?
I actually wanted to throw out a suggestion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I mean, Accessoride, they're kind of floating all around the city. They're a public, kind of entity that is available for people with disabilities. And they have the vans that are capable of carrying those wheelchairs. They're not the most responsive, but again, if it's not an emergency. Similarly, you can even just have like Ubers on demand that have wheelchair accessible vans. Maybe it's something like REMSCO sets up like the tow unit. They have the Uber hotline for transporting a wheelchair off the scene. Again, assuming that, PD is there to secure it until, Accessoride or your Uber driver gets there to bring the wheelchair to the hospital.
Who's paying for it?
Yeah, I just wrote that down. I'll take responsibility for following up on the reimbursement for this. I think that's a very exciting domain that you just took us to, David. I like that a lot. You called the company Accessorize?
Yeah, Accessoride is it's paid for by American with Disabilities Act. I think it's through New York State, pays for it, but it's run by New York City, kind of vis-a-vis the MTA. So that if anybody with disabilities, the Accessoride is covered, kind of like a Metro card. I'm not sure, how they would charge for, a wheelchair without a patient.
Well, the challenge with Accessoride is that they don't generally do, on-demand type of services where you call an Accessoride, because that's what because in the end, I think that's what really this is the situation you're referring to here is not picking a patient up from their home, so a wheelchair bound patient from their home and then taking them because they know where their wheelchair is, it's back at home. These are specifically patients that are taken in a public setting, right, where the wheelchair can't come with them. So the prospect is the wheelchair is being left in this public setting. So Accessoride does not, they're not going to get there within 30 minutes. That's generally not how they operate.
How long?
Certainly worth exploring. But the considerations do have to be kept in mind of, how long is NYPD going to keep an officer occupied guarding a wheelchair until an Accessoride comes?
That's where Uber comes in.
Yeah, I think the Uber idea is not a bad one, and it just follows the ambulance, goes to the hospital, then reunites the patient with their device.
So I don't want to take everyone's time. This has been just awesome, great conversation. With your permission, I would like to be part of a tag so that we can carry this offline and then come back to the next meeting with some ideas and follow up. How's that sound to you?
Sounds great to me. Could we get some volunteers, other people to work on this?
It's Brian Levinsky. I'll work on this.
Okay, thank you
It's Rob from Emergency Management. You can
very
throw me on
much.
that
Maria,
too.
taking.
Hold on. Wait. Okay, I got Dr. Leviton. Who else said they were going to?
Brian Levinsky and Robert Bristol.
Okay, great.
Okay, I think 3 people is an optimum number to work on.
Yeah, that'll be great. So just, Maria, if you can forward over their email contacts, I'll send them a note introducing myself and what this is about, and we can get together and figure out how to go forward.
Wonderful.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Everyone, I'm going to go back to mute.
Okay, is there any other new business?
Since we have some time, this is Jim Downey. North Shore University Hospital put out a updated visitation guideline, and they are indicating in the emergency department, visitors are not permitted. Normal exclusions, pediatrics, end of life, patients with development disabilities. Are any other hospitals re-implementing visitor restriction policy in the ED? And this would affect ambulances transporting relatives to with the patient.
We get notifications from many hospitals on and off that they're changing their plans, and they've been going back and forth for months. It's a moving target.
We had an EMS leadership with, again, North Shore University Hospital last week, and question was raised about service animals in the ED at this time. And the answer that was given was that they're not permitting service animals in the ED because it's an open space. Have you heard of, has anybody heard about any other restrictions from hospitals regarding service animals?
Are we sure about that? Because that's against the law. So I don't know if that's really true. I know that some hospitals are starting to revisit visitation. Presbyterian is starting to revisit. NYU is starting to revisit. Staten Island started to revisit. But service animals are protected under ADA, and it would be against the law to prevent them from being with their person.
Jerry, you were on the call. Do you remember that question coming up and the answer?
Yes, I do. Under this current climate, although service animals are allowed to be transported in ambulances to the EDs, they did make a statement that the animal would not be permitted by the patient's side because of the current COVID climate. However, they have been modifying their visitation back and forth.
That was North Shore that said that?
North Shore, Manhattan. Yep, it was brought up by their clinical staff.
I'll reach out to their leadership tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm also, Brian, if you don't mind, keep me in the loop just so I'm aware of what's going on moving.
Yep, no problem. I'm actually emailing them right now.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, any other new business for the ambulance committee? Okay, so a motion to adjourn is in order. We will reconvene at 6 o'clock.
You did. I just have one item.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm sure a lot of you know, within the recent news, there's been a lot of discussion about the way that mental health calls are going to be responded to, specifically by the fire department. There was a press conference that was held by the mayor during his COVID updates regarding this specific project that the fire department's undertaking right now. It seems that there is going to be some sort of a deployment matrix to mental health calls that are going to involve a mental health professional. I guess they're calling them a social worker, whether it's a therapist, I'm not really sure. Has the REMSCO itself been involved in any of these conversations? And if not, I'm just sort of trying to get some information, and whether or not I kind of want to make a motion here. So I guess I'll just throw out the first question as to whether or not the REMSCO has been involved in any of these conversations.
We have not heard any of this.
Okay.
This is the first time.
So I'm sure a lot of us are aware of it. So I just wanted to see if anybody from the ambulance committee wanted to sort of make a motion to ask Thrive NYC and the fire department and the mayor's office whether or not the REMSCO, just pursuant to the statutory requirement that we have under Article 30, should be involved in those conversations moving forward. I would assume that at some point this deployment is going to be probably protocolized. I think that we should have a seat at that table. So,
can we ask Grace or Christine, can you give us any information on this?
We haven't had any official meetings yet. We're forming committees now. The only thing I do know is that the implementation date is going to be sometime in February 2021, but nothing has been solidified as of yet.
Would you be able to request one of our physicians maybe participating on these preliminary discussions?
Request. I'm sorry, I missed what you're
request for having,
requesting.
like, I'm going to volunteer Dr. Schenker or maybe one of our
So Maria, I have no problem being involved, but I do know that OMA is involved and has been involved in these discussions. So this
state
is
OMA or city OMA?
no city OMA, Glenn's office.
Okay.
The
Oh,
fire department,
medical
OMA
affairs. Sorry.
docs are involved in these discussions.
Yeah,
I have no problem being
Dr.
involved as
Rosado
well,
and
but
Dr.
they are.
Okay, well then Dr. Schenker would, I'm sorry,
Come
go
on,
ahead.
Grace,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, Dr. Kaufman is the lead on this.
There you go.
Marie?
Yes?
To tag on to Sean, while we understand the FDNY Office of Medical Affairs and also happen to be REMAC physicians are on that tag, I think there should be a proper overarching REMSCO rep at that table to have a voice for all of EMS in the 5 boroughs from an administrative standpoint, in addition to the physician medical standpoint, because there's an operational and there's a medical component here.
Okay, well, I guess we can discuss this more offline and see what we can do about getting someone from REMSCO to participate in these preliminary meetings. Oops, hold on. Unless somebody else has a suggestion or wants to volunteer for it.
I don't know. I think that it sounds like this is, at least from what we've been seeing and what's been out in writing about this so far, is that this is a pilot with 2 units. And I don't know that we really need to be involved in this. I don't think that this is beginning at a really grand scale, that this is affecting the whole system here.
Well, it's always better to be in at the beginning so that when protocols start to be developed, we have some input into it, because it's not just the fire department.
No, Marie, I would agree, but also I think that if medical protocols are needed that will allow us to transport psychiatric patients to specific destinations, most hospital providers as well as pre-hospital providers, as long as their safety was intact, would want that. They don't want to have to wait for hours going to an ER that can't manage these patients. And most ERs can't manage a lot of these. They don't have the resources in place.
Believe me, I understand. I have a daughter that works in an ER who's always complaining about the psych patients that get brought there and they cannot handle them. And that's actually something that I've always been interested in. 100 years ago, we used to have the 939 hospitals. Some people probably remember those numbers, but those were the psych facilities where we would bring patients. Now it's a totally different system. And I know myself, I'm not sure which hospitals have the ED, the psych receiving abilities. That's something that we probably should put into our protocol books if we know what those facilities are.
Before I recognize the next person, let me just jump in here. I know that at Brooklyn College, the mental health office of the college has a contract with a specific hospital, which is not even close to being the closest hospital, that they call anytime there's a psych patient on campus and they don't involve EMS, and that hospital has entered into a contract with them to pick up the patient. There's often happened where they have called both Brooklyn College EMS, BC EMS, and them at the same time. And I've informed them that if EMS is on the scene, EMS is in charge on top of any particular contract that some hospital may have with some particular administrative office in the college. And at one point I said, I threatened them with arrest, that if they don't get out of the way, I will have the cops come and arrest them. Now I could do that as a fully tenured professor in the college and their faculty advisor. So that sort of stopped. But there is this issue. Let me recognize Travis. You wanted to say something? You had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Doc. And I think, just piggybacking off Sean's initial point, that there should be, and I think what he's looking for is some guidance from the REMSCO, not only to have our participation on a physician level, but on a provider level, because I think the fear amongst providers is this is a provider safety issue. And the recommendation coming from the REMSCO, or the conversation with the REMSCO, should be that this would be entered into with provider safety at the forefront of any conversation. And I think if Sean, since this is a point Sean did bring up, if there is going to be any recommendation that if we do put forth a physician, we also put forth a provider or somebody who's taking an interest in this, someone like Sean.
Dr. Langston, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, the protocol right now, the way it's written, patients that present as psychiatric patients still have to go to regular ERs to be medically cleared. So I don't know what it is that we'll be able to do unless even a psychiatric patient with a psychiatric history needs to be medically cleared before they're brought into a psychiatric unit. At least that's the way it is now. So this is very complicated. I just wanted to let that be known.
I think we're jumping the gun here, guys. I think this is a small pilot that once we see what the results of that pilot are, we might need to change the way we do business in the system. You're right, Marie. Everybody would need to be medically cleared, but maybe medically clearing them at a hospital that could also manage their psychiatric problems is a better solution than bringing them to the closest quote unquote psych receiving hospital and then have to transfer them. This is a very large problem in the system.
Yeah.
And it also leads to dangerous EMS transports on the transfer side as well. So I would say let's wait and see where the pilot goes before we start trying to plan for it, because I think we're jumping the gun a little bit.
Agreed, Dr. Schenker. This
Yeah, I
is
agree.
going to be a small pilot initially. Conversations haven't even begun yet, and it is not going to be 911 line units that are participating in this. It's going to be offline EMTs who are going to be trained. And again, this is still very, very early, and there's been no true determination made on how the FDNY is going to proceed with it at this time.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yes, please. I'd just like to direct people's attention to vibrant.org. Vibrant.org is the organization that promulgated and has successfully passed a new 3-digit hotline, 988. I'll say no more other than to go to vibrant.org. FCC has passed the 988 hotline for mental health crises. So you may want to take a look at that document and that website. Because this is getting to be a large discussion nationally. Vibrant.org. I sent the link to Marie. Thank you.
Okay, we are now just about ready to adjourn and start our next meeting. And people may want to take a step to walk around. So let's adjourn. If we have a motion to adjourn, and we will start our next meeting at 6:05. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Will it be the same Will it be the same
Yes,
link?
I guess you can stay, right, Marie? We should stay on.
Just stay on, just like close your camera, whatever, your sound, and
Camera and
take
stuff,
a
yeah.
walk for a few minutes.
6:05.
Okay. I just wanted to, our stenographers here. Are you here, Christina?
Hi, Marie. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Is there anything that you need from me before we start? It's the same attendance list as last time, but I can email that to you again.
No, I have it right here.
Okay, great.
Is it still for an expansion of an exiting ambulance service?
Of an existing ambulance service, yes.
Oh,
I'm gonna send you the motion. Let me email that to you now. So that
okay.
you understand what we're talking about. You're going to be transcribing our entire meeting. So it'll start at 6:05 and hopefully won't go longer than an hour. Famous last words.
No problem. And is there a meeting tomorrow too? I don't know. The agency was asking.
Oh, no, not a meeting that we need a stenographer for, just today.
Okay, just checking. Thank you so much.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm gonna send you that right now.
I appreciate it.
Everyone take a 5-minute break.
Okay, we're gonna wait for Marie to come back, and we will start in a moment. Marie is back. Marie, take a look around the room and see if we have a quorum for the REMSCO before you take attendance.
Yes, we definitely have a quorum.
Okay, and I also noticed that our stenographer is present.
Yes.
And people, please, when you speak, please introduce yourself by name. I'm Yedidia Langzam, and Marie, if it's okay with you, we will call the meeting to order. So I'd like to call the Tuesday, November 7th, 2020 meeting of the Regional EMS Council of New York City to order. The first item will be a
roll call vote.
Roll call vote. Thank you. It's a long day. Please answer, Marie, as she calls your name, and answer by name. Thank you.
Dove Jacob,
Dove Jacob is present.
Grace Cacciola,
Grace Cacciola present.
Christine Mazzola,
Christine Mazzola is present.
Samia McEachin,
Present.
William Goffin,
Present.
Daniel Mizels,
Daniel Mizels is present.
thank you. Robert Bristol,
Robert Bristol is present.
John Johnstone,
Present.
Travis Kessel,
Present.
James Downey,
Present.
Gerald Gelbard,
Present.
David Mekitansky,
Present.
Joseph Schenker.
Here yet absent.
Sure, confuse our poor stenographer. Scott Orlansky. He is absent. Mordecai Lax.
Here.
Martina Baccarella.
Here.
Nancy Benedetto.
Nancy Benedetto is present.
Vincent Barranco.
Vincent Barranco present.
Arthur Cooper.
I'm here.
Robert Krupe.
Present.
Megan Farley.
Here.
Manfred Fuchs.
Here.
Sean Graves.
Present.
Jerry Gumbo.
Present. Jerry Gumbo.
Thank you. Yedidia Langsom.
Present.
Brian Levinsky.
Present.
Dennis Laurie.
Present.
Mitchell Powell.
Present.
And that is the attendance. We have 25 out of 26 members present.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum. It's very nice seeing everybody here. I would encourage you to turn on your cameras to give a sense of camaraderie and family. But of course, you don't have to, but I would encourage you to do that. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the October 27th, 2020 meeting minutes, which were distributed. Are there any corrections or discussion? I would ask everybody to please mute themselves unless they are speaking. We have a very large number of people present. We have 38 people, and background noise and static can disrupt the meeting. So please, everybody mute. In fact, I'm going to ask Joe to please mute everybody, and then I'll unmute myself. Thank you. Okay, so are there any corrections or discussions regarding the October 27th meeting? Hearing none, could someone please make a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion
Jim Downey, motion to approve.
Thank you. I heard a motion and a second. Thank you. Is there anyone opposed? Is there anyone abstaining? Okay, we will therefore mark the minutes as being approved unanimously. The next item is the correspondence report. Let me read it through reasonably quickly. The New York DOH has informed us for the record that they have 2 certifications that were surrendered. Neil Toomb, Portchester, EMT number 410570, and Brian McIntyre, Long Beach, EMT number 382912. We also received the interim guidance travel advisor from the DOH, which was then sent out to all members of REMSCO. From ambulance agencies, we received communication from District 4 and 18 and Bedford-Stuyvesant VAC that they identified various items that are being revised and corrected to better operationalize the course. We have received email from Dr. Leviton regarding a patient transported without a wheelchair. We invited him to the meeting, and we will discuss this in the Ambulance Committee report. We received updated territory clarification from Glen Oaks VAC Certificate of Need expansion. We received the hearing officer's report. We received the public hearing transcript. We will discuss this matter later on in the agenda. The Office of Counsel sent out agendas, minutes, and associated attachments for this meeting. They sent out 2 letters, one to Ryan Greenberg, one to the Commissioner Zuckerberg, basically urging the continuation and prevention of 20% discount in funding for REMSCOs and program agencies. I assume that letter is going out tonight or early tomorrow morning. I have just signed it. We sent out a 2020-17 REMAC advisory online protocol update training, and I understand that the ALS one will be out any day now. And we also sent out 2020-17 REMAC advisory -A REMAC advisory online protocol update training supplemental information. And we sent out the hearing officer's report and a public hearing transcript, which you all should have received, and we will discuss this later on. Are there any questions regarding the correspondence report? Hearing none, we will move to the staff report. The emergency preparedness update, Scott.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Lansom. Good evening, Council. I'd like to report that Council is currently working with DOHMH on establishing the COVID vaccination pod for our providers with the proprietary and volunteer agencies. As more details become available, we will transmit the information, and we're looking for pod sites for this effort. Agency able to facilitate the vaccination pod, please email me directly. And also that the PPE strategic supply that the New York City has secured is available for order. Agencies that have difficulties in obtaining PPE in the open market can email me. There is a cost associated to this, and I can send you the list and the report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Okay, hearing none. I don't see any hands up. If you want, I can't see everyone's picture, by the way. There are a large number of people here. So please use the raise hand at the bottom of your participant list, and I'll try to recognize you at that time. We now move to the program agency update. Marie.
Okay, and my report just disappeared. There it is. Okay, my report is pretty short. Just recapping, thank yous to the leadership of Districts 4 and 18 who have been working with Bed-Stuy, providing them technical assistance. And I believe the volunteer sector did an on-site visit, and now Bed-Stuy appears to be ready for an on-site visit from the Department of Health. So we wish them luck and hope that they follow through with everything that they have received from Districts 4 and 18. I also understand that leadership from Districts 4 and 18 have offered assistance to Bensonhurst VAC. They've not heard back from Bensonhurst at this time. If anyone has information updating this, let me know. The REMSCO peer response team has 14 providers trained in suicide. They're train-the-trainer instructors. We're scheduling a meeting for next week to begin scheduling a region-wide training of EMS field providers in at least the suicide prevention course. You also should have gotten emails from us, from someone that's working with the New York City Department of Mental Health, and maybe Dr. Krupi can give us a little more information on that later. And finally, the New York State Department of Health is working on finalizing the program agency and REMSCO contracts. Unfortunately, no contracts have yet been executed for any regional council or program agency in New York State, which means that since July 1st, we have been working for free, but we're doing what we have to do. And as Dr. Langsam said, letters were signed and they will be sent out tonight or early tomorrow morning to Ryan Greenberg and to Commissioner Zuckerberg, urging that the budgets not be reduced by 20% statewide, because that would be disastrous for all of the program agencies. And we also are asking that the regional council receive written affirmation that the contracts will be continued, just to give us a good faith belief that we will eventually have these contracts in place. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Marie on the program agency update? Hearing none, we'll move on. I neglected to begin the meeting by announcing that we're operating under the governor's executive order to allow us to have meetings remotely, provided that the meeting is recorded, which it is, as you can see from the upper left-hand side of your screen, and that it is being live streamed on YouTube, open to the general public. Because of the open meeting law, any vote will be taken by roll call vote rather than by signatory, and the votes will be recorded by name. We now move to the ambulance committee report. Before we get to the main item of the ambulance committee report, there was a report from several of the tags. The tag, the mapping tag has essentially concluded its job, and they were thanked for it. The tag, ambulance sticker tag, well, it was reported that ambulance stickers are available for any agency that needs them for free, and the office will send out an email to all agencies reminding them of the importance of having this sticker on every ambulance that needs to gain access in an emergency situation to a closed off site. And we are told that the ID card supplies have arrived, and the ID tag is going to meet one more time to discuss precisely what is going to be placed on the tag. And I'm sure at the next meeting, the next time we meet, we will hear more about the ID tag. Okay, any questions about anything in the ambulance committee report so far? We now move to a seconded motion that came from the ambulance committee regarding the determination of public need for expansion of operating territory for Glen Oaks Volunteer Ambulance Corps 7380. Marie, could you please read the seconded motion?
Okay. This comes in the form of a seconded motion from the ambulance committee. The ambulance committee, which has conducted a public hearing, has carefully reviewed the information, materials, and record in this matter, recommends that the hearing officer's report in the matter of the application submitted by Glen Oaks VAC to expand its existing territory into Bayside and Oakland Gardens communities in Queens. The borders are Long Island Expressway, 26th Avenue, Cross Island Parkway, and Francis Lewis Boulevard, be accepted and the application be recommended for approval.
Thanks, discussion. Is there anyone on the REMSCO who needs to recuse themselves by having a conflict of interest? Please identify yourself.
Jerry Gelbard. On the perception of a conflict, I will recuse myself from the vote.
Thank you. Maria?
Yeah, that's creepy. I'm also the medical director, so I'll recuse myself as well.
Okay.
This is David Mekatansky. I'm a board member. I'm actually chair of the board for Glen Oaks Voluntary Ambulance Corps, so I'm going to recuse myself as well.
That's 3. Is there anyone else? Is there anybody sitting around the table, the virtual table, who feels that someone should have recused themselves but did not? Hearing none, we will now name.
I got to go in the attic, take down the Christmas tree and all the trimmings. And
Wait, Dominic, Nelly, okay, good. Where was I? We'll now begin a discussion on the motion. You've received the report of the public hearing, okay, of the officer. You've seen the report and the application. Discussion. Please raise your hand so we can recognize you. There should be some discussion for the record on this.
Travis is raising his hand. You got to look at the pictures.
Isn't it showing up on the participant list?
I know, but he has his hand actually up like this.
Who?
Travis Kessel.
Travis Kessel, District 4. Sorry, it bounced me out when you were asking about recusals.
I'd appreciate if you're recusing yourself.
Yes, sorry, it bounced me out. I had to relog back in.
Travis,
I will be
recusing? Okay.
Yes.
Travis is recusing himself, number 4. Okay, thank you. I'd appreciate if you try to raise your hands by putting on the participant list and check raise hand at the bottom of that list. It would make it much easier to identify you. Is there anyone else who wants to speak pro or con this motion?
This is Jim Downey. I'm serving as a director, Nice Bearer for District 4, and wish to indicate our wholehearted support of the motion.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Hearing none, Marie, please have a roll call vote of the voting members only of REMSCO.
Okay. So the motion was just read, and as I call your name, please state in favor, against, or abstain. Dove Jacob.
Dove Jacob in favor.
Samia McEachin.
Yes.
William Goffin.
In favor.
Grace Cacciola.
In favor.
Christine Mazzola.
In favor.
Daniel Mizels.
Daniel Mizels abstain.
John Johnstone.
In favor.
Robert Bristol.
Robert Bristol, in favor.
Travis Kessel is recused. Jerry Gelbart and Dave Mekatansky are recused. Joseph Schenker,
In favor.
Scott Rolansky is absent. Mordecai Lax,
In favor.
Martina Baccarella,
In favor.
Vincent Barranco,
In favor.
Nancy Benedetto,
In favor.
Arthur Cooper,
In favor.
Robert Krupe. Oh, you recused, sorry. Megan Farley,
In favor.
Manfred Fuchs,
In favor.
Sean Graves,
In favor.
Jerry Gumbo,
Jerry Gumbo in favor.
Dennis Laurie,
In favor.
Brian Levinsky,
In favor.
Mitchell Powell,
In favor.
and finally our chairperson, Yadidja Langsam.
In favor.
Okay, the motion carries.
You want to read the vote into the minutes, please?
Yes, I'm going to count. 13. We have 21 in favor, 1 abstain, and 4 recused.
Thank you very much. None opposed.
Excuse me, Marie.
Yes?
Did you count Jim Downey in your vote? Because you didn't ask for his vote.
I thought I asked for him. Oh, I'm sorry, James Downey. James?
In favor.
Okay, so it's 22 in favor. I apologize.
22 in favor, 4 abstain,
No,
4
one-
recused, 1 abstain, and no opposed.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, we now move to the Training and Education Committee report. More relax.
Everybody, so Training and Ed is going to meet sometime in the first 2 weeks of December. Date is yet undetermined. We have not met since the protocols have begun to launch. I did receive a draft. The way that this was done is Training and Ed put together all of the materials. Materials were delivered to the Department of Health, and the Department of Health was packaging it and putting it online. Again, thanks to everybody involved and to John McMillan for his assistance up north. So I got the draft on the ALS today, was just a little bit behind. So that should be up and running on the state site in the next day or two. I don't see any reason why by the end of the week at the latest it would not be up there. BLS is up there, over 800 people have taken it so far. And by the next meeting, I should have some reporting abilities as well, so we'll have more information. My estimate is that we'll probably need to start doing a little bit more of an aggressive messaging campaign to get it out there so that we can push to get it done. But I'm have faith that we can accomplish that.
Are there any questions for Morty Lex?
You did not a question, but just a reminder to everybody on the call. I did give my word to the state that this region would be completely compliant by January 1st. So I urge everybody on this call to please go to their agencies and do whatever you have to do. I know that the ALS training is just going up now, but a month should be plenty of time to get everybody up and running. Please go to your agencies. Please ensure that all your providers are updating so that January 1, we can start using the unified protocols.
Thank you very much. Dr. Schenker, I think it would be a good idea if a letter went out under your signature as chair of REMAC to all agencies stating that in writing once again.
Marie, that sounds great.
Okay, I will get a letter ready. I wanted to just add to Morty's report. It has more to do with the REMSCO website. Right now, all our training centers can post their courses for free on our website. But right now, we're in the middle of getting this particular function updated and fixed. So it's been down for probably 4 weeks. We are working on getting that up and running so that you can go back to posting your courses. And I just wanted to let everyone know, I did send out an email to let all the training centers know about this, this problem that we're dealing with right now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for the Training Education Committee? Thank you, Morty. Thank you, committee. Thank you. We thank you for all the work you've been putting in. We now move to the Regional Emergency Medical Advisory Committee report. Dr. Schenker, I believe you're it.
Okay. I like that. All right. So basically we met on November 10th via Zoom. The following is what was discussed. A revised pain management protocol for implementation in January of 2022. So a year from now was passed. This will go to the state. It is pretty heavy on the standing order controlled substances, as well as some pain management options that are not controlled substances. So I think it is definitely a step in the right direction. And specifically for all of you on this call, this was one of the last protocol that Mike Guttenberg worked on. So this is a tribute to him for us to get it done. The region also approved a vaccine protocol with an appendix. The appendix currently is specific to the influenza vaccine, but all future vaccines in the region that are approved will be added to the vaccine appendix. The appendix actually is Appendix V. That was just coincidental, but that's where the numbering went to. Okay, what's next? The bylaws had an additional revision that was made, removing the reference to the Medical Standards Committee for the municipal and non-municipal language. So now the two members of the, actually Marie, it's the vice chair and the chair reference that was removed. So there is a representative from the Medical Standards Committee that is of the municipal sector, one of the non-municipal sectors, but they are not limited to the chair and vice chair. And the bylaws will be on the agenda for the next 3 meetings to have their final approval. We already heard from Dr. Levitan. He initially presented his information at the REMAC, which was sent to the ambulance committee, which we heard about. The ET3 tag will reconvene under the leadership of Dr. Rabrich. This is to identify any ways that REMAC can assist with operationalizing and help with protocol development towards the ET3 project. The ET3 project officially goes live January 1st. The fire department, as the operational lead for this, has indicated that they will not be ready January 1st, and implementation date will be forthcoming. Credentialing and certification continues to evaluate the exam questions. The goal is to make an exam that tests knowledge rather than a memorization of the protocols. And an interfacility tag has been formed with Dr. John Berkowitz from Northwell as the committee chair, and that will begin to meet shortly. For anybody on this call who's interested in participating, please let Marie know. This is specifically to look at interfacility transport issues. And that concludes my report. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Dr. Schenker? Hearing none, we move, thank you. We now move to the Quality Improvement Committee report. Who is doing that, Marie?
I'll do it as well. I have it here in front of me.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, so the meeting was on November 4th, chaired by Dr. Redlener. There was one regional restriction which was reviewed, I'm sorry, not refused. We have reached out to the agencies to request more information relevant to this. So we're awaiting that. A COVID after action report was put together. I must give full kudos to Joe Ranieri on this call for the amount of work that he put into that. Thank you, Joe. He put together a really nice after action report. The language is being fine-tuned. Eventually that will be released to the region. There is a survey being sent out as well that looks at the mental health issues specific to COVID and after action. The First Watch dashboard was discussed and was presented originally at the REMAC meeting. This is a 911 dashboard sponsored by a grant from the American Heart Association that will look at and try to help us with our measuring of metrics for stroke and STEMI. And we are beginning to look at, because this is a question that keeps coming up, the utilization of data for research, trying to formalize a process by which a person can request of the region data. The QA committee, even though this is not truly QA, is beginning to look at other documents, other agencies, examples to try to put together a regional process by which anyone would be able to request data of the region for research purposes. All members of the Quality Assurance Committee will be signing a confidentiality agreement. So that is in process. I think Joe can answer how many people are fully signed off on that. But that concludes the report. The next meeting will be on December 1st.
Any questions for Dr. Schenker? Hearing none, we'll move on. There was no state EMS council report. They did not meet. They will be meeting next in December. And we now move to unfinished business. I'm not aware of any unfinished business. Marie, is there any?
No.
Okay. We now move to new business. I am not aware of any new business. Does anyone have any new business?
I know it's early to start talking about EMS week, but we didn't have an EMS week last year because of COVID. And I'm hoping that we do have an EMS week this year, but I would like to ask for volunteers to form a small committee of council members to help me work on the program. What do we want to highlight? Who do we want to highlight? This shouldn't be done just by council staff. It needs to be done by people who are actually in the field. So if anyone is interested in working on this, and in the hopes that we actually have an EMS week and we don't have COVID all the way through till next summer, because then we'll be talking about Suicide Prevention Week instead of EMS week. So just contact me if you're interested, and we'll get started now.
Excellent idea. Is there any other new business?
You did, yeah?
Go ahead, Dr. Krupe.
Yeah, Marie actually mentioned it earlier. The New York City Department of Mental Health and Hygiene reached out to Marie and I. They put together some training around mental health, and it's something that actually can be leveraged for EMS. And it deals with self-care, psychological first aid, normal stress responses, acute stress reactions, PTSD, depression, how to seek help, and how to recognize a colleague who's in trouble, and what to do. So I think maybe we should just put it out there to our agencies. I'm mostly concerned about those agencies that are maybe less resourced, such as some of our volunteer agencies. We could probably even attach some CME credit to it for those agencies that are interested in doing something like that. But I think it'd be something worthwhile. It's certainly something that should be considered.
Dr. Krupe, would you like to put together a short letter which Marie can then send around to all the agencies?
Sure, I'd be happy to do so.
Thank you very much. Is there any other new business? Hearing none, before you adjourn, please take care of yourself, everyone. Okay, please stay in touch with each other. Do something for yourself out of work. And I look forward to seeing you at our next meeting. A motion to adjourn is in order.
Thank you.
And wishing everybody a happy Thanksgiving, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year, because we won't get together until January. So stay healthy and happy.
Thank you.
Hopefully 2020 is a good year.
Happy holidays to all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Happy to everyone.
Happy holidays, people.
Bye.
Be well.
Bye.